All right. We are trying something new. Hopefully, this one will work. Yes.
Let's see, there's some mischief afoot, but again, we soldier on. It is certainly my intention to continue to inform and educate as best I can using this medium. But we may have to find alternative internet sources as we move forward. Let me say, before I address the question, Mr. Michael Usher, my heartfelt thanks and congratulations to the Southern Caucus of the People's United Party for their stance on ICJ. I believe it's important for members of the party, especially senior members of the party, to address the issue and to come affirmatively on one side or the other, and I believe that the Southern Caucus has it right, that they have made the right call in this very important issue. Now, I can only hope that other caucuses follow. I also would want to mention that there were a number of members of the Northern Caucus in that meeting that have also taken that position, the position of no to the ICJ. I recall seeing Honorable Francis Marin, Monte Cervantes, among those there, as well as Honorable Cordell Hyde. So I want to say again, congratulations on the position. It's one that I support, it's one that I advocate, and I believe it is the right position. We have all to lose, everything to lose, nothing to gain. This is not where we should be. It's not something we should even contemplate. But since it's been forced upon us, the best position, the right position is no. I will address it in more detail a little bit later on. But let me address Mr. Usher's question on the cross the floor legislation. In 1993, a number of our viewers would remember that there was an issue with Honorable Salvador Fernandez and Honorable Chista Garcia and Honorable Stanley Usher, and all of the UDP, the then ruling UDP administration. Those persons were subject to a move to have them change parties outside of an election season while they were in Parliament. It didn't succeed, but it could have succeeded. As a result, the 1998 PUP administration enacted legislation to block parliamentarians from switching sides prior to any election being called. What that legislation also did was to shackle parliamentarians from addressing issues affecting their constituencies where those issues were adverse to the position of their party when their party is in power. The perfect example of this was in relation to Honorable Marcel Cardona in the first UDP administration, or the first of this 10-year period where we've had 3 UDP administrations. Marcel Cardona was on principle opposed to certain measures being taken by the CEO of the niche department of his ministry in relation to certain parks and cultural sites, and he made his opposition known and made it clear, and by virtue of that position that he took, he ran afoul of the popular thinking within his party. And he was put not only in the back bench, he was not put in the back bench, he was actually ostracized in the house.
Exactly.
And subjected to ridicule and abuse for voting his conscience, standing up for his principles. So this is the genesis of it was 1993. The clearest example of the detrimental effect of it was in 2009, I believe it was, or 2010, when the issue with Mr. Cardona occurred. But what it does, it impedes our democracy from true development, because it forces parliamentarians to toe party lines even when the issues affecting their constituencies are at stake. It's the constituents that elect the member of the party to parliament, and once the constituents so elect a person to parliament, the obligation of that person, who is now a representative of the people, is to represent the people, their constituency. So if the constituents have a position, it is incumbent on the area rep to carry that position forward, whether it is adverse to or in accordance with their party objectives. Now there are certainly forums for you to have debate. If you're a member of cabinet, that's where that could be done. But certainly there is also room for debate in the House. That is where debates on issues of national importance take place. So in that regard, I am certainly opposed to the maintenance or the keeping of that particular legislation. It is undemocratic, it is autocratic, and it is certainly detrimental to our democracy. One of the tenets of democracy, by virtue of what it should be as envisioned by Pericles, the Athenian creator of this way of rule, was that by having vigorous public debates and venting of issues, that we would be appealing to our better angels, that cooler heads would always prevail, that reason would triumph over dogma. Well, since 1989, I will go to 1989. Since 1989, our political trajectory and discourse has been appealing to our lesser angels. We have deteriorated as a democracy as opposed to progressed. So we are now here at this juncture in our history where we have an existential threat being presented to us in a form that is so deceiving that most of the population does not truly understand what is fully at stake. And I come back to speak on the situation of the ICJ. Because as much as we are being told that parliamentarians will be allowed to vote their conscience, we have heard from the two leaders of the major parties that they have already decided that from what they have seen, a yes vote is the best way to go. I want to say that when such a position is taken outside of the House, it is an indication of what is going to be sought inside the House. So it was certainly important, and it should not be understated, the importance of what took place today in relation to the Southern Caucasus publication of their position. It is a direct challenge to what appears to be a combined position held by the two leaders, Bresenio and Barrow, on this position, on this situation. So, congratulations on that. It shows leadership, and I hope that the other caucuses will quickly come out with their positions so that the Belizean people can be given that opportunity to appreciate the gravity of the situation facing us.
How many people are on that caucus?
The Southern Caucus is comprised of the three parliamentarians, Stan Creek West, Toledo East, Toledo West, and the standard bearer for Dangriga. Okay. Right? So there are 4 members, apart from the constituency committees that also form the caucus. But in terms of the leadership of the caucus, it would be the representatives and the standard bearer who form the leadership of the caucus itself. You see, the Western Caucus, of course, would be the standard bearers from Kaya North, Kaya West, our parliamentarian from Kaya South and Kaya Northeast. Well, Belmopan has no standard bearer yet. And yours truly is still in the race, vying for the opportunity to represent you, the good people of Belmopan. You have told me not to give up. You have told me, keep fighting. We are with you. I have heeded your call. So I am giving it another shot. I'm giving my party another chance to do the right thing. Some say you never get a second chance to make it right. Well, here we go again.
Isn't this a third though?
Is it? Is it? It may very well be the third.
But
it may very well be the third. And they say 3 is a charm, huh?
The third time it's a charm. Yes, the third time is a charm. And again, we need to give our viewers an update on this particular venture.
Well, again, this issue is not about me. It just so happens that I am at the center of it, but it's not about me. Let me just read what my esteemed attorneys have put together. Understand also that the first round of litigation is over. That case has been won by default, but won all the same. They say, pretty win better than ugly lose. So we have won that one. There's a judgment in our favor as it relates to the issue of whether or not the resolution that was being used to block me from running was in fact valid. There is a decision on that, and it's not in the favor of the trustees. Now we come back now because there was a vetting or
a
meeting that was purported to be a vetting that took place on the, was it the 26th of July? 26th of July. Yes. And at that meeting, only 2 of 4 members of the vetting committee showed up. Sir Lobiza and Miss Lenny Jo Usher. They were the only 2 that showed up. I went there and I answered every question. Every question. Most of which my understanding was should not have been asked. But what was most disturbing about the entire situation was that Miss Usher was there. Not that I have anything personal against Miss Usher, I don't. But just by virtue of the fact that her son is named in the action, she should not have been there. And this was so as a result of that, and what had transpired in that meeting, I won't go into any detail about that here. It was clear that there was no objective exercise being done, that it was a preordained situation where we were only going through the motions. And that was not what I signed up for. I didn't sign up to go through the motions. I signed up for a vetting. If all the issues were to be put aside as was agreed, as if it didn't happen, then all that was required was my service to the party as qualification for my ability to run. That never came as a result of that process. So, by virtue of that, we're here now. I didn't say anything before on this issue, but certainly going forward, should the matter need to go to court, you'll hear more from me on the issue. Suffice it to say that basic fairness, the rule of law, the application of the rules of natural justice, these are the principles that I adhere to, that I stand for, that I fight for, and that I seek to ensure all our citizens have. If I cannot fight for it on my own behalf, what confidence would you have that I would fight for it on your behalf? This is the reason I take the stand. Because if I don't take the stand, who will? The stand must be taken. Where will it lead? Will it lead to me being given a chance to represent the PUP in Belmopan? That is the hope, but there is no guarantee. There is no guarantee. And I come into this knowing that fully well.
Okay, Ms. Lightfoot writes, Arthur, is there anything in the Constitution that says a referendum can change the Constitution? Would it take 3/4 majority of the House to authorize recognition of the ICJ and potentially change the boundaries of Belize?
The Constitution requires that any question pertaining to the boundary of Belize and its change must first be brought to the people of Belize. There must be a referendum, a vote on that issue prior to any such position being taken. Now, what we have in relation to the compromise is a usurpation of the constitutional requirement to put that question to referendum. Because this referendum that is being called is not addressing the issue of our boundary or the size of our territory and its potential change. It's only asking whether or not we agree to submit the question of Guatemala's unfounded claim to the ICJ. But Article 5 of the compromise grants the judges at the ICJ the authority to rule on Belize's territory, whether it remains the same or be changed. Our Constitution does not allow for that. that is being slipped through unconstitutionally, and we are going to be unwittingly yielding sovereignty to the ICJ and its judges. So, answer your question, Aria. The Constitution requires a referendum as it relates specifically to the question of our boundaries and borders. But this is not what is being put to referendum on April the 10th. What is being put to the referendum is simply whether or not we agree to give the ICJ the authority to make a ruling on the claim. But the claim involves our territory, whether it remains intact or be changed. And I choose my language this way because, as with anybody else speaking on this issue, I cannot say how the ICJ will rule. But from my point of view, there is a great likelihood that they will not rule in our favor.
Michael Usher writes, how comes Belize cannot protect its airspace?
There is no will. Listen, we hear of the excuses that we don't have resources. We hear of the excuses that we are small and defenseless. And that's just it, excuses. Belize has had for too long a strict adherence to a culture of exclusion. A culture where we exclude people at home by virtue of their ethnicities in many cases, or their political affiliations, and our people in the diaspora because they are not here. This has been our historical curse. As a result of that, we are less defensed than we should be. We are less capable of defending ourselves than we can be. There are many in the diaspora who has military training and expertise. There are many in the diaspora who has technological capacity and have worked with drone manufacturing and what have you. In fact, I know of a number of persons from the diaspora in Silicon Valley and elsewhere who have worked on technology like drones. And since we don't have the manpower, but we do have many young people who are very much in tune with video games and gaming and would be readily capable of manning drone stations, there is no difficulty in us investing monies in getting drones. Drones to patrol our airspace. We don't need to put pilots up there. We have enough people who can maneuver a joystick and be trained to fly drones. That should be our first line of defense in terms of our airspace. Regular patrols using drones. It shouldn't be expensive. There are surveillance drones that we can get. Drones is not a very, very new technology. It's been out for more than a decade. And certainly we can get from surplus military stores in the US, drones. Or since the US is one of our great allies and want to assist us so greatly in the war against drugs, why not petition for 5 drones? Or 6 drones, 1 for each district. Or 4 drones, 1 for each of the coastal districts. Because it's more than likely that these planes are coming from the east. Certainly not coming from the west. But this would be a question to be asked and answered by the present Minister of Defense. You see, it seems that whenever he takes the portfolio, the planes keep coming.
Another one this week, huh?
Yes, another one this week. burnt to a crisp. But the curious thing about that plane that landed in Las Leguas. They say that the airstrip is a registered airstrip. Registered to who? Who owns the airstrip? Is it a civil aviation airstrip? And why is it registered in Las Leguas? Do we have tourism in Las Leguas? Do we have a huge agricultural community in Las Leguas? What's going on in Las Leguas for there to be a registered airstrip in Las Leguas? Who owns it? That is what we want to know. Who owns the airstrip in Las Leguas? Since the police have said it's a registered airstrip, they must know who it is registered to. Let us know. And then we can surmise what may have been in those planes, or in that plane.
Mr. Osha says, I can recall that drones and training were provided by the USA.
Yes, there were drones provided to the Coast Guard, but I have not heard of those drones being used. Again, another question for the Minister of Defense, who is either complicit or asleep at the wheel.
What happened down south this week with this Stone, where the outgoing area rep was stopped? You didn't see that one?
I did not see that one.
Ooh, Arthur.
I did not see that one, I must confess. Pray to hell, can someone inform me? He was stopped on the Stone.
Oh. We will have to have those photos on your page.
By all means.
Yes, and I wonder who took those photos.
The big deal was stopped?
Yes. At the Stone this week.
God.
Surrounded by army.
Guatemalans. Yes.
Surrounded some
Ah.
He surrendered without a shot? Incredible.
I wonder the same thing, writes Amira Smith. Who is the airstrip registered to? Why did the reporters not ask this? Maybe the media knows.
Well,
media has a funny way of
we need to know
not asking certain questions when it's kind of obvious.
But we need to know the answer to that. It should have been a basic part of that reporting. That yes, the police say it's registered, but to who? You see. But no, it's a great embarrassment for the Minister of National Security to be stopped in Belizean territory and accosted by Guatemalans. Come on, man. Come on.
It begs to wonder when I saw that, what were the agreements that were signed in Placencia that we have yet to see?
Well,
that's another story all by itself. But
he is normally a very vocal and person. I haven't heard from him in quite a while. It seems that the cat has caught his tongue. The Guatemalans have got his tongue. So, not such a big deal after all, huh?
Nope.
Not such a big deal after all. And they always talk about Will. But Will has never been accosted by the Guatemalans to that degree, as far as I know.
Will know his territory.
Is it?
And he knows it well. And they know Will.
Yes.
Because I have been down there and I have seen how they act. But they have never stopped him through.
Precisely. I mean, I don't understand. So the forward operating base at Hunting Key couldn't come to his aid.
But there is a base right there at the Sarstone, at the mouth of the Sarstone.
Yes.
That couldn't help neither.
Neither. Right.
Oh, there were Belizean soldiers in the background though.
Could it be that he was drunk again?
Doggy was there.
Yeah, we have to ask Dougie really what happened. He's famous for taking.
Because he's been touching the sauce heavily as of late. the outgoing area rep. You gotta put the sauce down, man. Take a look at your GPS before you stray into, straight out of Belizean territory. We have the main channel of the Sarstone. Anything right of the main channel, Belizean territory. Left of the main channel, you're in problems.
Now let's look back at some of we had started tonight with Belmopan and the sale of the Hilltop. This week, for example, though, Arthur, we have had a lot of rain, and the rains. When you look now on the ring road, we have had some very hefty investments on the ring road.
Yes.
Now it's gathering water. I've never seen the ring road gathering water, and the potholes are just.
We're having flooding in Belmopan where we've never had flooding before. After $6 million was spent on cement streets and renovation of the ring road. Now I want to know who really did these infrastructural works, because the understanding that we're getting is that the city council cannot pay its workers because the subvention is going towards repayment of the $6 million bond that was raised to build this, to make these cement streets and to do the refurbishing of the ring road. But the outgoing area rep, every chance he gets, makes the claim that the monies that did all these works was Petro-Caribe money. It came out of the Petro-Caribe fund. So which is it? Was it $6 million raised by the bond from the city council that did it? Or was it the Petro-Caribe money that did it? Because if it was Petro-Caribe, what happened to the $6 million? And if it was the $6 million, what happened to the Petro-Caribe funds? We need answers to these things, because it's quite a sizable amount of cash that was used. And right now people are suffering. Many families of workers at the city council have not been able to make ends meet because these workers have not been paid. And the excuse that has been given is this $6 million bond that the subvention is going to. The excuse that is being given for people to be evicted and put on the street and their properties sold to other buyers is because city council need money to pay workers. So we need to know what really happened in terms of the Petro-Caribe money that the outgoing area rep claims was a source of funds to construct streets, and or the $6 million that the mayor claimed was raised, for which a subvention is now being sunk. We need answers, people, because something is not right. Something is not right, and it's happening right under our noses here in Belmopan.
We also have seen too that our greens are not being cut the way it should.
No, nothing is being done. Garbage is not being collected. Greens are not being cut. We are having flooding in areas where we had floods before. The streets are already breaking up, right? The streets are already being broken up.
And again, we're not getting proper.
We're not getting proper reporting of crimes in Belmopan. Murder is on the uptick in Belmopan. Ronnie Blades was just murdered at the Belmopan Day this past weekend, and another person was also killed in Belmopan this past weekend. We didn't hear anything from the police about those things. No details about what took place. Every time there's a function in Belmopan, we are having violence. There's a total breakdown of law and order in our city. And we have as our area rep the Minister of Defense and National Security. The Minister of Police and Defense is our minister.
Or area rep.
Our area rep.
Outgoing, I guess that's why.
He has obviously abdicated his role. He seems to have no interest in serving the people. But he claims to want to be leader of his party. I don't understand it. It's great cause for consternation. That on the one hand you could be saying that you want to be given greater responsibility, but on the other hand you cannot take care of the responsibility you already have. No, man. That's a recipe for disaster.
Mr. Usher says, yesterday I observed Belmopan City Council workers patching craters on the George Price Boulevard with gravel.
Again, the George Price Boulevard is a main artery into Belmopan. If any street or thoroughfare should have been paved, it should have been that one. It should have been that one. You have Almond Boulevard again, which is incomplete. That should be another area where traffic could be made more efficient by diverting a great number of vehicles that are coming into Belmopan from going through the Malado Parade area, but instead they could come directly up into Belmopan proper by taking Almond Boulevard. But no interest in getting that complete. It's only half done. But this is where we're at in Belmopan. You see, everything in Belmopan is being neglected. Everything except Isidoro Beaton Stadium, who I don't understand. I don't know at this point what is the management situation at Isidoro Beaton Stadium. Does it belong to the city of Belmopan, or does it belong to the outgoing area rep? He seems to have exclusive control over the stadium and the revenue derived from it. You see? I don't see anybody else other than persons who work for the outgoing area rep manning the cash booth at Isidoro Beaton Stadium. We need to know what's going on. How much revenue is being generated by the stadium, and where does the revenue go? Where does the revenue from the Isidoro Beaton Stadium go? How much does the Bandits pay to play and practice in the stadium? And where is the account of those monies that the Bandits as a club pays? Because the Bandits must pay. All bandits must pay.
Then, Arthur, we look at school reopening, and you see around a number of people not being able to get the supplies that is necessary.
Yeah.
I saw a Good Samaritan getting second-hand uniforms and second-hand books to distribute to people in Belmopan, which is a very good cause. However, apparently those things were quickly requested.
Yeah.
We have 2 more weeks for school. People can't find their little way to get their children ready.
It seems that there are more and more students and families in need of this kind of assistance than ever before. I cannot remember a time growing up when we had so many people not being able to afford books, school bags for primary school going children.
Worse for high
right?
school.
And it's an indication of the poor health of the economy in Belmopan, and certainly is a matter for great concern, because one must consider the esteem of children going to school. Going to school, especially the first day of school, if you don't have the things that you need, is a source of great depression for a lot of young people, a lot of children. The few in my time that had that kind of problem, I know, was for them. So I can only imagine what it is for the children now. But again, a lot of this is as a result of the fact that there's been no real investment in Belmopan to provide jobs for people. A lot of the people going around right now seeking assistance for books are young mothers who have children in primary and high schools, primary and secondary schools. And it is difficult to look at the condition of these people without trying to help, because the need is clear and apparent. And when you understand the value of education and appreciate that only education can break that cycle that these young mothers find themselves in, then it's incumbent upon us to do whatever we can. But those that were elected to do something about this condition bears the greater responsibility. They bear the greater responsibility because the people's trust was invested in them, invested in the outgoing Europe, who should have been doing what he could to bring jobs to Belmopan. It's all well and good to have a stadium be built, but now that stadium is gone, and most of the workers who built it were not even from Belmopan. It's all good and well to have streets be built, but the streets are now built and they are breaking apart. But the people who built it were not even from Belmopan. It's all well and good to have a Belmopan day and all these recreational activities, but we are seeing more and more that the people going to those activities, many of them are there to prey on fellow citizens. Our people are less safe because there is greater poverty in our community. And there was never a time before now when we had this level of poverty and crime in Belmopan. Never a time before the 10 years or 13 years of John Saldivar leadership. Never. Never. That is the sad truth.
And then we have to look at how we, as far as Belmopanese are concerned, I see, and maybe I'm wrong, Belmopan is a very quiet community, but because of the influx of UB coming in, and students from all over the country coming in, we have more and more people who are looking for rooms, looking for reasonable and afford the things that they can afford. But we see some of these people too who are building rooms at very ridiculous prices for these students. The dorms are so small. I watched the other day, I went in to help someone move in. I think the room, the kitchenette, everything was, they put a bed in it, and you had like 2 steps to reach the door. And I was shocked when I was told you're paying $500 and that does not include electricity, it doesn't include water, internet, and these are students. We have to do better when we regulate what is being offered, and some type of standards have to be there.
Oh yes.
We have to start to have standards in
Well, Belmopan was developed with standards in mind.
yes.
In fact, it was always appreciated that we shouldn't have wooden buildings in Belmopan, but we are having more and more wooden buildings pop up. Certainly, in terms of the housing market in Belmopan, we know that Belmopan is one of the fastest growing communities in the country, and there's great demand for housing accommodations. Now, we live in a capitalist society. Certainly there is need to have a social conscience, but the prices that these rooms are going for will be dictated by the market. It's basically going to be predicated on what people are willing to pay. If it is that people cannot afford to pay, then those buildings will be left unoccupied until their prices come down. But at this particular time, given the state of this economy, one of the two things will happen. You see, one of the two things will happen. Either you will have those apartment developers getting the price that they're asking for by having students or their parents fuck the kind of money that they're asking. You will have those buildings be empty for a while, and then the prices come down. It's a basic law of economics: supply and demand. The more supply there is, the greater the chance that prices will come down if the supply outweighs the demand. But as you've rightly said, the fact that UB is established here, we have the main campus here in Belmopan. There will always be great demand, and demand will outweigh supply, because there is only a finite number of those types of buildings close to UB. And even the ones that are being built in the peripheral communities, the prices are high. Right? And one of the reasons why those prices are high is because the cost of construction is high. Cost of construction is high because we don't produce any of the capital good for construction in Belmopan, which goes back to what we discussed in the last week's town hall and the establishment of a cement plant in Belmopan. It is needed, it is doable, it is feasible. $45 million a year is what we spend on the importation of cement. 4% of what our trade packages with Mexico. 4% of the trade with Mexico is dedicated to cement. It may seem like a small percentage, but it accounts for a lot of money, because we also import of cement also from Guatemala and some from Trinidad, but not to that great extent. But certainly, if we are able to produce cement in Belize, it would do something to reducing the cost of construction. One of the big problems with the housing market has been the imposition of these housing projects done by the government of Belize. What these housing projects have done is that they have artificially inflated the prices of the capital goods for construction. Only for a short time do they exist, but once the prices go up, they don't come down. And that has been a major problem.
One of the problems, so Michael Usher asks, do the people of Belmopan know that the first cement streets constructed, which should have lasted 30 years, is in need of repairs? It's broken up. The steel is showing. If no one believes me, just go and see for yourself.
Yeah, no, I've seen, and I am aware that the streets are breaking up in Belmopan and in Belize City. But our concern here is Belmopan. And it cannot be said that we have a high water table that's impacting the street It's not that. The fact is that they use 3/8 steel and less than 5 inches of concrete. Most of the foundations in our homes, which are not built to sustain traffic, vehicular traffic, have more steel and concrete.
And so what we have to do now, what we are seeing is that there is a need for us to try to make better policies so that those policies will not affect long term. Because while we are paying the taxes, you find that our kids will have to pay the same for those streets all over again. Yeah. All right, and then some, yeah. And then some. So we have to be very, very careful. We are getting fast into our last 15 minutes. And one of the things we usually wrap up on is that of ICJ, trying to make sure that people understand what ICJ is all about, and trying to let them see the alternative proposals that are being made to the ICJ. We are saying that it's not that we're just saying no and we don't have a proposal. The fact that Guatemala wants something from Belize is such that we can make a satisfactory effort, at the same time gaining grounds and stopping the method and the madness that they are purporting to claim us.
Listen, Guatemala is like any other country that is seeking to advance itself in the world. It will take advantage of every opportunity to increase its size and its wealth. Well, there's really nothing wrong with that, save and except they should not do it at our expense. Going to the ICJ would be giving them that opportunity to expand their size and wealth at our expense. The truth of the matter is that we are at this position because we haven't been without leadership for too long. Leadership in relation to the development of our economy in a way that would have us be viewed as a country that is progressing. That has not been done. We have gone from being between 1950 to 1965 the #1 producer of coconut in the region, to not even having coconut listed as a cash crop anymore. Some of you who are old enough would remember Captain Foot Monaghan, Way Monaghan. Captain Foot was a large exporter of coconut that were left to what we would say spoil, become rancid, because the old coconut is what copra is made from. Copra is used in lotions, perfumes, shampoo, and all manners of cosmetics. And Belize was a main exporter of copra for many decades. Today we are not. Belize was also a major exporter of chicle until they found a synthetic way to produce gum. So we have lost many industries, and we have not sought to replace or improve our economic stock. As we stand right now, citrus is in trouble, sugar is in trouble, shrimp is barely hanging on. Banana, 60% of it was wiped out by virtue of neglect when Maya King was being punished unfairly. And we say unfairly because today, John Zabane stands vindicated, having won his case against the United States government. But we no longer have 60% of the banana industry that Maya King accounted for. Something that could have been avoided. So when Guatemala looks at us, they see a plum ripe for the picking, because we have wasted time and opportunity for economic advancement. The proposal that is on the table and has been on the table since 2011 is called the Gladden Plan, and it's a deficit neutral project that could bring about a total 180 turn in our economic prospects. It calls for the extension of the Riviera Maya from where it stops presently in Chetumal to be extended along the coastline of Belize to connect the Hondo to the Sahastoon with a rapid transit expressway that will allow for overland commercial transportation between Mexico and Guatemala via Belize. It would be a major road of convenience, which means that it is one that would attract tolls, something like the interstate. You pay to go through it. What the road does, it would create a mobile market much larger than our landed market to allow for greater development of industry and commercial activity along our coast by the implementation of industrial park facilities, 500-acre industrial park facilities in each of the 4 coastal districts, and 500-acre industrial park facilities in the Cayo and Orange Walk districts as well. Light and medium manufacturing going on the coast because of our proximity to the reef, heavy industrial activity going on inland. The feasibility for it will come from the mobile market and our greater integration with Central America and North America. It will be deficit neutral because all that would be needed was for government to give us the right of way by having private lands be converted for public use, which is in their position, which is in the right of every sovereign government to do under eminent domain. Taxes that are owed by these large landowners along the coast could be deferred for a period, and what is owed and forgiven for the right of way. Once the right of way is given, then we put the project to tender, having an 80-20 split between private investors and government on whatever toll is collected so that there can be a return on investment. With that return on investment, we have the capacity to maintain our roads, that particular road, and do other things. But we also open up the country's potential for a major port development at Robinson Point, which would be the best place for it. Recently, I was looking at the development of the new channel for the Panama Canal, which has widened the original existing channel to accommodate post-Panamax ships that are wider than 106 feet. Now, post-Panamax ships can come to Belize. They can come into Robinson Point as is. But of course they would not, because there is no facility there. But by putting a port there, constructing the road, we would be giving Guatemala the chance to work along with us to realize its ancient dream of being able to connect the Atlantic with the Pacific. However, we will be coming into it as a partner, not a vassal state. There's a big difference. There's a big difference in being a subordinate vassal state and being a partner. But we cannot be a partner if we have nothing to offer. What we must offer is our vision for development and our capacity to realize the development, because it would then bolster both our capacity for economic advancement and Guatemala's capacity for advancement. Together we can be what we were always intended to be. If the British had done what they were supposed to do in 1859, the Panama Canal would not have been necessary. It would not have been necessary. We still have a shot at getting this done. If you want to know more about the Gladden Plan, it is on YouTube. You can access it. Listen to me speak on that issue. I gave a full presentation of it, and there is the literature on it that I can make available if you would want to have the opportunity to read it. But it is a way forward that can allow for us to resolve the Guatemalan issue without having to go to litigation, and certainly without having to compromise our territory. In fact, the Sarstoon Island is a central part of the Gladden Plan, because that Sarstoon Island is where we should have our point of entry with Guatemala. The province of Izabal is one of the wealthiest provinces in Guatemala. The per capita income is more than 9,000 US per capita in Izabal. The province of Petén is one of the poorest in Guatemala. The per capita income in the Petén is less than the per capita income in Belize. And we are, per capita, the second poorest nation in the region, next only to Haiti. I'll repeat that again. Belize is the second poorest nation in the region. Our economy is only outperforming Haiti, and we have less industrial capacity than Haiti. But we have hooked up to Guatemala at its poorest point. The road to Jalacte goes into Petén. The George Price Highway ends in the Petén. Yet and still, we have done nothing to assert our position on the Sarstoon Island, which crosses right over into Izabal, is close to Livingston, close to Rio Dulce, the closest point to Guatemala City. We are running away from the wealth of Guatemala and embracing its poverty. That is not the recipe for advancement. It's a recipe for our demise. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being with you tonight. I look forward to next week coming to you again to continue our conversation for the development of Belmopan and Belize.
And thank you. From Studio 21, good night.